Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So we're back with an interesting one today. Instead of doing like an updated complete guide or a supplementary guide, etc., today we're gonna be going through the builds, runes, and spells for every single ADC in the game. Now, not including APCs, but every single viable ADC in the game. So first up, before we dive straight in, got a couple of things that I need to cover first. Now this is actually the second time I'm recording this video because actually I forgot to press the record on my phone screen on the first time. So I did have the voiceover, but I didn't have the actual visual footage. So second time I'm doing it, and I found that there are more efficient ways to do it. So first up, I'm going to cover a ton of points in the beginning before we dive in. So firstly, on majority of the builds, I made a video on it already, so I'm not going to discuss the builds in depth at all. I will mention whether I have or have not done a video on it and what video that might be, and you guys can refer to those videos for the in-depth explanation of the build. Now this is so that the video doesn't go for an hour plus, because if I go through every build in depth, it's going to take more than an hour. So those builds that I have not done a video on, like for example, and I don't plan on doing a video on, for example, AP Kai'Sa or AP Misfortune, I will be explaining those builds a little bit. And then I'm also gonna now talk about the runes and the spells. So for the runes, I'm on a pretty bad example here. Okay, for the runes, generally every ADC is gonna take Conqueror. There's only a few that take some other runes like Fleet Footwork or something like that. Basically, because Conqueror is the best rune. So basically, any ADC who can take Conqueror will take Conqueror. Those that cannot, you guys will see what the other runes are. For the Domination rune, every ADC will basically take Hunter Vampirism, and there's only very few who take other things like Draven with Champion or Jhin with Weakness. And for the third rune, it basically always is a choice between Hunter Titan if you're against a heavy CC team, Bone Plating if you're against a heavy burst team, or Adaptive Carapace if you're the type of player who prefers a strong laning phase. For me personally, I almost always take Hunter Titan because I do like more tenacity. And for the Inspiration rune, generally the rule of thumb is if you can go for Hunter Genius, you will. If you need Mana Flow Ban, you go for that. If you don't need Mana Flow Ban or don't need Hunter Genius, then you would go for Sweet Tooth. So that's the general rule of thumb for the runes. For the spells, you always take Flash, and like 99% of the time you will take Exhaust, because in the current meta, generally the ADC is the only Exhaust in the team, and you need it to use on like assassins, backline, divers, skirmishers, etc. So many exhaust targets. Generally, every match is going to have at least one exhaust target, so you always take exhaust. Your other option is going to be barrier. Now, this is of course based on the current meta and patch 3.1 to 3.2. Of course, it could change to like ADCs taking heal in the future, but basically I would think it's always between these three options. I can't see ADCs taking something like Ignite anytime in the future either, unless it really is that broken. Alright, so next up, you will see that I have GA in every single ADC build, except maybe one or two. Now this is because, personally, my belief is that GA is required for every single ADC, because in solo queue especially, you can't rely on your support or your team to keep you safe, and sometimes you can get one shot by an assassin like a Rengar or a Katarina, so you need that GA to come back to life. So on all of the builds that I haven't done videos on, if I have GA in there, I'm going to discuss what items you can use to replace GA with if you don't like building GA, or if your GA is down and you want to get a better item. Alright, now lastly, you can ignore the naming up here, because I change some of them, but I don't change some of them, so the naming isn't really important at all. And lastly, the first build I show you guys will be the default build. Now sometimes when I enter that champion's build page, that may not be the correct build, because I already did record this once, as I mentioned, so sometimes I left it on not the default build. Anyways, without further ado, we can actually jump straight into the video. Alright, so here first up we have Vayne. So this is Vayne's build. I covered this in the latest Vayne updated complete guide, so not gonna talk too much about it here. Next we have Jinx. So this is the latest build for Jinx, covered in the latest updated complete guide, but Jinx also has a couple of other builds. First one is to include, first one is the old build, which is the AoE build, going for Runan's Hurricane after going for IE. So this is outdated because of how strong Storm Razor is. You normally want to go for Storm Razor. GA can be replaced with another crit item or energized item. Energized item, of course, as a general term, means rapid fire cannon, static shiv, or Storm Razor. So another variation of Jinx's build is adding a Bork in front of either one of her builds, like basically her old build or her new build, adding a Blade of the Rune King in front of it. Some people like this because of the lifesteal and the attack speed, but personally I think that it is unnecessary. Same deal here, GA can be replaced with any crit item. Alright, so next up we have Jhin. So Jhin goes for this build, triple crit item. I actually explained this in my Jhin updated complete guide released recently, but Jhin has another build which is the lethality build. So Jhin lethality build consists of going for Youmuu's into Age of Night, into Mortal Reminder, and then going for 2 crit items. There's no GA here, mainly because after you go for like a IE and then you go for a GA, it doesn't quite make sense because you don't quite have enough crit to make your crit actually useful. Of course, you do have your Frost Shot. However, I feel that in this case, in this scenario, even Jhin in general, in his default build, I feel that Jhin is probably one of the best champions to not build GA if you really are not going to build GA on any champion. So this is going to be his build. Alright, so next up we have Kai'Sa. So Kai'Sa, obviously AP is not her default build. This is her default build. So Kai'Sa, I've done a updated complete guide recently, as well as a supplementary guide recently, going through the 2 builds of Kai'Sa that starts off with Storm Razor. So the first one is it looks like this. The other one is the BF Sword Start. Either way, the final build is going to look like this. Of course, refer to both my updated complete guide and supplementary guide just for that. Next up, we have the AP build. So the AP build generally is something you build in ARAM. You wouldn't want to... Now, this is a general statement for all the AP builds I'm going to be showing you guys, unless I say otherwise, like AP Kai'Sa, AP Varus, AP Misfortune, AP Ezreal, you know, whatever AP builds I show you guys. I only put it there because it is a viable build. But if you're going to go for an AP champion in the bot lane, you generally wouldn't want to go with either of these. You would go for Corki or an AP carry like a mage. You wouldn't go for an AD carry building AP. So I'm showing it to you guys because I want to cover all the builds because they are viable, but you wouldn't normally go for it in like a ranked match playing in the ADC role. Now Kai'Sa specifically, you wouldn't play Kai'Sa mid because there are just so many other better mid laners. In PC, Kai'Sa mid works because you have a 2 item power spike of Luden's Tempest and Manamune, but it doesn't work that way in Wild Rift. You don't do as much damage, you don't half-health someone with 1W. So anyways, I'm going to briefly explain the build. You start off with a Luden's Echo to get your W evolved, then you finish off your Manamune, and then you get a Longsword from the Guardian Angel to get your Q evolve. Then you go for the standard 2 AP items of Death Cap and Void Staff. Now take note, in this build you cannot sell your GA because you need the AD from your GA to get your Q evolve. So if you sell your GA, you lose your Q evolve, and that is not ideal. So yeah, next we're gonna move on to Lucian. Now Lucian this is basically his build at the moment, of course covered in the latest updated complete guide. Now just my personal feeling, I feel like if they happen to nerf Storm Razor or something, this will become Essence Reaver, even though it's not that good of an item. He really doesn't have a lot of other options. So this is a more utility build of Lucian, which I have not covered and I'm not planning to cover. Basically, Blade of the Rune King, you can proc it instantly using any ability plus your double auto. It's really useful. Of course, for the lifesteal as well and the other stats. Black Cleaver, you proc it really fast because of your double auto, proccing 2 stacks of Black Cleaver. So this is a lot more utility because it helps your entire team shred armor, so your whole team does more damage, not just you. And this can be any damage item, Storm Razor, you know, IE, Essence Reaver, whatever damage item, you know, suits your fancy. And GA can be replaced with a crit item as well, of course. Alright, so next champion we have Tristana. So Tristana really only has one viable build in my opinion, which is full crit. There are other variations that involve Runan's Hurricane or Bork, which I don't think are very good at all. So this is her main build, which I already explained in the updated complete guide. Next up, we have Zaya. So this is the Zaya build I explained in the updated complete guide, but she does have another build, which is this one, going for Bloodthirster instead of an energized item, and I am planning to make a supplementary guide on this one really soon, so look forward to that. Lastly, we have the Lethality build, which I made a supplementary guide for just because I thought it was fun, but in reality, I don't think it is. I think it is viable, but I don't think you would ever pick this build, because if you want to go for Lethality, just go for Varus instead. It's way better. So, but it is a viable build, of course. So Corki, in my opinion, this is his main build that I went through in my updated complete guide. The other build you can go for is not going for Manamune and going for the rest of the items. Obviously, last item you go for GA. GA can be replaced by another crit item. And next we have Misfortune. So in my opinion, her best build at the moment is a Lethality build, which all the top 10 players of Misfortune are building at the moment. I'm going to be making a Misfortune updated complete guide with this build in the near future, so you can look forward to that. But basically the main change is building Black Cleaver to shred armor for your entire team, mainly with your ultimate. So next up, you have a crit build of Misfortune, which you still go for Manamune, but you go for like these kind of crit items. Now, I think Misfortune needs Manamune, because if not, she runs out of mana. Same deal with Corki. I think that Manamune is absolutely essential. Lastly, we have an AP build. As shown, you basically, this build mainly relies on your E, your Make It Rain, to slow down enemies, which allows you to proc Liandry's Torment for longer. Of course, Rylai's for even more slow and more damage. Normal 3 AP items to end off with. Weakness, of course, because you're going to be slowing people permanently, but as I said, you would never really want to go for AP Misfortune because there's so many better AP options, but it is still a viable build. Draven. I've covered this in my latest updated complete guide, so you guys can refer to that. In my opinion, he only has one viable build. Ashe. Updated complete guide on Ashe is coming out real soon. I've been spamming Ashe in ranked at the moment, but I have to say I feel that she's very weak. Like I think like she really does no damage, at least compared to the rest. From my experimentation, you have to go for Blade of the Rune King as a first item for your own survivability and utility. I tried going for a full crit with a Storm Razor first item, and I find that you just die way too easily, and even with a full crit build, you're just not doing enough damage. So Bork is just simply better. This is an on-hit version kind of build, which isn't really that good because there is no Guinsoo's Rage Blade in Wild Rift. You can also remove the Manamune and just go for these two as your first item instead, but I really feel that this build does no damage as well, and it just isn't really that good. Now lastly, we have a semi-troll Ashe support build, which was popular at a certain point in time because of pro play, like I think at this point, close to a year ago, maybe 9 months. Basically, it consists of going for a Black Cleaver, because with Ashe's Q, in case you guys were unaware, just by pressing Q and auto-attacking one person one time, you fully proc Black Cleaver because of all of your mini arrows, so you can shred armor of the enemy team really easily, but it's very hard to play this playstyle because it means you have to auto-attack different people at different times, because your main goal is to shred armor for your team. So you have to attack, for example, the enemy Thresh once, then you switch your targets to, let's say, the enemy Darius, and you attack him once as well. So it's really hard to do in Wild Rift because of the targeting. Awakened Soul Stealer, so you can get your ult more often to, of course, get more ults for your team. Of course, the Moral Reminder for the Grievous Wounds, and end off with an Ardent Sensor to help your team get more attack speed. This eventually becomes Manamune after you completed all your items, or somewhere in between the build. Fawn of Life, just so you can proc your support items like the Ardent Sensor more easily, but really you would rather pick any other support other than Ashe support. So Varus, his most meta build is Lethality, and I've covered this in my latest updated complete guide, not like recently but some time ago, because this has been the meta Varus build for a long time and nothing has changed. Varus is an on-hit build, basically same as Ashe's crit build, but it's simply just not good at the moment. AP Varus is viable, but it's not good as well because there are a lot of better options, and this is what you go for AP Varus. Basically, AP Varus relies on you hitting your ultimate to get the 3 stacks onto the enemies and popping the stacks for that huge burst of AP damage. Now, next up we have Ezreal. Now, Ezreal actually has 4 viable builds. So first viable build and the default build is, of course, Triforce. But another viable build you can go for is Divine Sunder, which I made a supplementary guide on recently. Triforce build is in my latest updated complete guide, and there is going to be another build, which is the Iceborne Gauntlet build, which I am planning to make an updated complete guide on in the near future. But basically, this build is kind of, the Gauntlet build is kind of when you are against a lot of AD and a very kiteable team. Lastly, we have an AP Ezreal build. You go for Luden's Echo for the poke and mainly the mana. Then Lichbane, which has the Sheen passive, which allows you to proc off your Q. Then the usual couple of AP items at the back. So Gathering Storm because of AP, Electrocute because you want to burst down a single target, and Mana Flow Ban because you don't have mana in this build, so you kind of need the mana. Alright, so next up we have Akshan. So Akshan has a number of build variations. Every build you definitely build Blade of the Rune King. Akshan needs Blade of the Rune King because he's swinging into the enemy, so he really needs that lifesteal. If not, he's gonna die way too easily. So this is my favorite build, and I think the most meta build for Akshan. Going for crit, which is Infinity Edge and Runan's Hurricane. There is a on-hit build as well, where instead of going for crit, you go for a Wit's End second item, and then you go into an IE and standard items of Serelda's and GA. GA can be converted into another crit item, in this case Runan's Hurricane. Then there's another variation, we add a Black Cleaver to the front of either build. So you build Black Cleaver first because on his E, you hit targets multiple times, which shreds their armor, which is why you get Black Cleaver. Then you go for Bork, of course, which is in every build. Then you can actually go for a on-hit build, which this would then become the Wit's End, and then GA can be replaced with IE. If you go for a crit build, which is building IE, then this will be a Runan's Hurricane if you need to replace it. Alright, so next up we have Caitlyn. Caitlyn only has one viable build in my opinion, and that is covered in my updated complete guide of Caitlyn. And lastly, we have Senna. So I'm planning to make an updated complete guide on Senna. I feel this is the best build for Senna at the moment, being the Divine Sunderer build. So the other kind of builds you can go for is the damagey, more ADC kind of build, where you go for Mana Mune, which does proc off your Q. Edge of Night for lethality, and you can see the works. I believe I covered this in my previous updated complete guide, so you can take a look at that. Lastly, we have a more supportive build of going for Black Cleaver and then going for the Ice Born Gauntlet for of course that slow field. But this build is basically identical to Sunderer build, except that you build Sunderer instead of building that Frozen Gauntlet. So now it's basically a kind of choice between, this gives you more sustain and tank shred, whereas the Gauntlet gives you a little bit more utility, slow, and a bit of armor, of course. It's kind of a choice between those two, but I think at the moment Sunderer is really strong at the moment, so I think Sunderer build is probably better. So with that, we've actually managed to cover everything in under 20 minutes. Of course, because I didn't explain majority of the builds, because you can already refer to all of my updated complete guides, supplementary guides, etc. For all of the updated complete guides, the timestamps are in the description for you to take a look at and jump to the build, runes, and spells if you want to listen to the explanation on those. So hopefully this compilation of all the builds, runes, and spells for all the ADCs was helpful to you guys. So thank you so much for watching the video, and goodbye.